How's it going, everyone? Welcome. Earlier again. Today we're gonna explore now this intermediate React Native course as a way to understand now how the navigation works behind the scenes, and therefore find and understand and be able to build and generate is the entire production ready React Native builds for iOS and Android until we publish to their respective store. Now, on that, all right, the idea is, well, look at this course made by Katie Craman, software engineer that previously worked at Formidable, a creative agency where she was the director of engineering mobile services. Currently now working at Expo as a software engineering, and that is the goal of this course. Is that look at how to production ready apps using React Native and Expo using iOS and Android. Now, so the specific stuff that we want to look at is that this dive into the routing navigation in Expo, because it can be quite problematic and something that I see in several applications that work with React Native is that navigation, especially when they want to split, and I don't know who thought that that would be a great idea to split each one of those pages as their own models, because that lead us to increase the complexity of development and all that kind of stuff. But in any case, based on my experience, I will stick to monolithic until it really makes sense to now make everything a model, right? Or especially put every model into their own repository, which I don't think this is a good idea. I don't think, but in any case, so here we are, right? So we're gonna explore now this, also Sustan, which is this state management, and now what are the benefits of using Sustan over Redux, UI patterns like full screen models and deep linking, part of this React Native application development. And then we have now the implement features like image selection and quick actions, very narrow specific to this. And then how can we package and deploy your app to store with proper metadata, splash screen, and icon using is now Expo. Again, this is the TLDR of this course. As a way to understand how do we get here, by make a quick recap of the previous core, which is the introduction to React Native. In that course, we'll learn about the fundamentals. And that is the inner mechanism. What is the value proposition of React Native, and what are the architecture and the inner mechanism, how that everything works behind the scenes. So then we're starting to understand now what are the stuff that we can build here using React Native, and that is all of these user interactions or UI that are exposed from React Native as the core features, where we can now where we can now is use those common features and functionality that React Native Core exposed to us, such as the text, the view, the text input, what is the anatomy of the React Native component, and look at how can we now use other common components like text input, how that show now a keyword, and how can we now modify the keyword to show only a string or numbers or email, and the way of rendering elements with scroll view or flat list, and what is the subtle difference between them. Now, then explore at the navigation as a way to look at the three types of navigation that we have now in React Native applications, such as stack, tabs, and models, right? And how you can do this nested navigation. And luckily for us, in Expo, we have this nice convenient features of doing the file-based routing similar to Next.js, which is a great stuff. Now, sorry. Yeah. Now, on that, then we look at how can we now enhance the user experience by adding is, for example, toggle. How can we work, for example, with pressable and this common user interface that is provided by React Native. Also, how can we sort elements, dive deep a little bit on the JavaScript aspect, and provide animations, whether it's using the layout animation by React Native, or if you need custom navigations, use now the the custom library called Reanimate. Okay, and how can we now persist the state of our application using async storage? And that lead us to also explore the way of how can we now add device interactions. So these device interactions are now ways Okay, so these device interactions, right, are now way of how you can, for example, is add haptics, which is this touchable and vibration feedback. How can we use now haptics behind the scenes to provide this kind of vibration feedback? And the push notification, and how now this can be labeled in in-app notifications and push notifications, and why we actually go with in-app notification for that particular course, because push notification is something that requires is quite involved, because now you somehow that server needs to register the push the push device ID, and then send that to the proper server for push notification, whether it's Apple or Firebase, and then redirect that to the current device. And there's some logic involved to that. Also, if you want to create now in-app notifications, how you can do that. And there is now iOS and Android. And in Android has a particular way of how you can now add all of these different notifications as a channel, where in iOS you just only add that you can have access to. Now, then we look at how can we add now, for example, animations like confetti, and create now a scheduler app, as well as a shopping list and a scheduler app. I think that was very interesting, very involved in terms of understand how can we work with sorting, date, okay, and actually build a React Native app. Now, so in today's video, what we're gonna do is now, is now actually mimic that stuff from the scratch. So we're gonna take note from that course from Cathy Kremen, And then you're gonna see me coding and push all of those to a particular repo that I'm gonna share with you as a way to now, well, understand how do we get here, and enough of me talking. Let's get into this.
React Native. So material-wise, this course will follow up from the introduction course, but we'll be building a brand new app from scratch. In this course, we're going to cover some additional topics that didn't make it into the intro course, and halfway through, we're actually going to also leave behind the Expo-Go sandbox and work with development builds to add a couple of features that wouldn't otherwise be possible.
So we're gonna leave the Expo-Go and work with the development build, which is good. that's one of the reasons why I want to do this. All right.
Entiendo lo que me escribiste. O sea, la cita no es el 20 y pico. No entiendo de verdad. Mentioned that it is possible to bypass setting up your local build environment for development builds and build in the clouds with EAS, but for this course, we're going to build our development client locally. It is incredibly useful to know how to do this even if you are using EAS for your development builds, because it will help you debug more complex functionality down the line.
Exactly.
Or if you
Which is this is one of the reasons why we want to look at the entire process of creating this production ready React Native on iOS and app by looking now at the development build instead of the Expo-Go, because this is useful, especially if you are now developing is more complex application or native model.
you ever want to create your own native module, it will be easier to iterate on it. So for this workshop,
Absolutely.
you will need to have your native dev environment set up for at least one platform. Just a quick
So let's go to set up our native environment, right? Let's get into this. It's supposed to be quite straightforward. We are now here. Set up your own environment. Setting up your environment is not required if you're using a framework. With React Native framework, you don't need to set up your Android Studio, or Xcode framework will take care of building the native app for you. Exactly. With a React Native framework, you don't need to set up an Android Studio or Xcode as a framework. We'll take care of building the native app. But sometimes, if you have constraints that from prevent you from using a framework, or you like to write your own framework, then setting up a local environment is required. Which is, for example, if you're working for financial sectors, which is something that I am, yes. After your environment is set up, learn how to get started without a framework. Like this. And there you go. Okay, so but we are in a Mac. I want to do this for Android. So whether it's you have now Node and Watchman, I think this is quite interesting and important. Step 2 to do. We also look at the word of boot methods and the UML and all that kind of stuff. Just as a way to now understand why UML is useful for large companies. This unified model language as a way to look at the, yeah, absolutely. Now, so the point of this is the ultimate guide to UML diagrams, is to understand that this unified modeling language is a way of how you can look at an architecture and a software from different angles, so you can have now a more broad sense of what's going on behind the scenes. So exactly, because coding can be a complicated process with many interrelated elements. There are often thousands of lines of programming language that can be difficult to understand at a first glance. You know, a UML diagram is simplify this information into a visual reference that is easy to digest. It uses a standardized method for writing a system model and capturing conceptual ideas, right? So you can create now beyond the code. UML diagrams are also great for visualizing relationship and hierarchy within software components, similar to decision tree or flowchart, but specific to software, right? So this again, this is not something that we're going to look at this order 101 for each object, calculate price, right? But the point of this is, by looking at this, you know, class diagram, package diagram, object diagram, component diagram, and deployment diagram, right? Composing a structure here, you can easily create one using a user-friendly UML component diagram tool like this, which is great. Bubble, Deloitte, DocuSign, Counterfold, Access, Pexico, and again, this big company actually make heavy use of this UML component diagram. Product, item code, order, and all that kind of stuff. Change system faster, master planning, agile diagram, and all that kind of stuff. UML component diagram template, UML state machines diagram template, UML sequence diagram templates, UML class diagram template. But as you can see, you got all of these different templates to work with. Now, you might wonder why I brought this up. You know, why am I bringing here? Why am I bringing this to here? Okay. Yeah. Grady Butch enter here, auto methodologies, and Jim Rumbaum. They combine these unified methods in the 95. Holy moly, bro. Modern new software or plain software development and prioritization. Simply put, if you need a way to visualize and plan your software development process, a UML diagram is incredibly helpful. For business management, a UML diagram helps teams organize their workplace, create process documentation, and streamline their workflow. The benefit of using UML diagrams: keep everyone on the same page. If you use, for example, use cases, and most commonly use UML diagrams, UML diagram type, structural diagrams, or behavioral diagrams, use cases most of the time, in the class, right? The component diagrams. Oh, that's a good introduction. The component diagrams. The component diagrams, book, package, transaction member, use case diagram, activity diagram. Is I gonna check out the account? I can withdraw or deposit, whether it's a condition, withdraw no allow, withdraw amount, update account, deployment diagram, sequence diagram, patron, ATM, control, and database, insert car, eject car, enter deposit amount, enter withdraw amount, insert car, verify PIN, control, invalid PIN, eject card, request amount, and eject card. Exactly. If there is an invalid PIN, you eject card. Or you can use request amount. Enter deposit amount, update account from the control, and then withdraw if sufficient funds. There you got it. Enter a withdraw amount. But this is for sequence diagram. Object diagram, bank, package diagram, best practice for creating UML, and find the right software here. Create UML diagrams. Okay, but again, this is useful for So okay, but again, the idea of looking at this is just to understand that for those big companies, especially those who are required to have all of these different diagrams and all that kind of stuff, because most of those startups, they don't think they need to build that. And perhaps they might be right at the beginning, right? So they're building this kind of stuff, and then everything have sorted out until there is some tech lead or director of engineer that has everything in his mind plus the business aspect, right? Now, in any case, here we're about to set up is the Android and then the iOS, so no problem with that. Let's get into this. So first we need to install is using Homebrew. I think I have Homebrew. I want to use now Warp here. So Warp, I have quite a amount of time without using it. Yep. Did I already have all of these repo? Exactly. So update all of this. We are excited to launch AI features that proactively recommend fixes and next actions. Confirm, which is great. And let me now close all of the other services that I have running as it is, Okay. So, we open a new one here. Right. There you got it. And you got it. But I want to go to there, So what I can do is to say, hey, I want to get access to the level of intrusion here is quite is weird, bro. Oh my god. Oh, for real? Anyway, go back to here. And what I list is the hidden file as well. We got is the I don't think React Native here. Here we are. There you go. Okay, let's get into this. Let's go into now. I already have Homebrew, brew version. Exactly, I can say brew update. So this is a package manager from macOS. The missing package manager in macOS. That's right. You have 22 updated formula installed. You can upgrade with brew upgrade and list with brew updated. Okay, and I have quite a lot, by the way. I got cargo from Ruby and all this kind of stuff. Terraform cleaner, view language server. View language server. Interesting. Fund, Newcastle, Mackay, TurboTax, Valhalla. Quite a lot of stuff here. Anyway, let's go to update that, upgrade them. The OpenSSL certificates, Fastline, Ruby, interesting. I already have installed Ruby. Alright, yep, so I don't need to install Ruby, which is a great stuff. Fastline, Cocoa Pods. Cocoa Pods is the package manager of iOS development that is written in Ruby as well. Upgrading Ruby. CA certificates. Alright, removing all ones. Get text, Fastline, Cocoa Pods, upgrading Git also, and here we are. Alright, so you might want to add this to your path. Ruby is key only, which means it was not symbolic linked into up Homebrew, because Mac OS already provide this software, and installing another version in parallel can cause all kind of trouble. If you need to have Ruby first, you do this. Compilers to find Ruby. Compilers to find Ruby, you may need to set this. Okay. SQLite, the keygen with main not seen link. So if you need to have SQLite first in your path, run this, export SQLite this, and the compilers for that. Fastline will install additional gems like this, and there you got it. So so it doesn't create a, so we already have that. Ruby, that's right. And what's going to now install is no. I already have no install. So I'm using another version manager, but I don't have Watchman. This file watching, yeah, file watching. And then we have to make sure to install now the proper Java here. Okay, this is to install now Homebrew. We're installing is Watchman. Okay. So the powerful thing of Expo is that it allows to, so Expo now handle all of the build stuff that we need to, right? So things are less manual. But you might want sometimes some, I don't know why you, there you go. So now Zulu was installed. I want to know, where do you install the Java here? Okay, I'm clicking to install analytics and all of this. And if I want to now check at that. Okay, so now this exists as expected. All right. So after opening Finder, double click to install Zulu. Oh, after opening Finder, double click to install. Okay. And here's where we are going to install now the GDK. We just downloaded. Exactly, we just downloaded. And here we're going to now install is the GDK here. Let's get into this. That sound. Okay. And after opening that, after the GDK installation, add or update your Java home to that, which is something we can take a look at this because we're using shell. Say, let's take a look at this, man. Like this. And we import is this. Ruby Manager versions, the compilers, the no version manager, okay, and I don't think we have that. You can say is code of the code. All right, I want to open here, and I don't see is Java here. Exactly. So we need to add that as a global environment. If you use the above stack, JDK will likely be located at library Java virtual machines with all of this. And then you need to export that as it is. The Zulu open a JDK distribution of a JDK for both Intel and Mac 1. This will make sure your builds are faster on Mac 1 compared to using an Intel-based JDK. So if we go to here, let me see if we did that on the source. Yep, on the source here we don't have now Java, for example, Java. No, okay, good. Let's get into this. This is Java installation. Java. So we save this. We save this. We rerun this by saying source. All right. There you got it. And the question is that how can we make sure that we install that, right? Java home, and then let's go to now download the Android Studio. This is something that might take quite a bit of time to download with Mac Intel chip with here exactly. I think I already have Android Studio. No, I don't believe you. Okay, well, anyways, and what's the other one? Exco, of course. I already have Exco, which is good. All right, that was fast. Good. Now installing the application. It might take quite a bit of time. There you got it. We already installed that. Okay, cool, good. So while Android Studio's installation wizard, make sure that check the boxes. So while I'm doing this, make sure to following items are checked. Yep. Downsend. I want to do a standard, right? Make sure that the Android SDK, which is using 35, and the Android SDK platform, and the Android virtual, and the Android virtual device, or the emulator. Here they don't say anything of virtual device, but it's more like that. Android virtual device or emulator. Now they changed that. You go to custom here, like so. Android virtual device. We already have the SDK. But what about the platform? What about the platform here? So let's go to install this one. right? So here we are installing is the Android emulator, source, SDK build platform, and the system image. Okay, followed by all of this. And now we are downloading this, right? Makes a lot of sense. Good, good. Okay. Yep. So if the checkboxes are grayed out, you will have a chance to install these components later on. Once setup has finalized and you are present with the welcome screen, proceed to the next step for this. To install the Android SDK. Android Studio installed the latest Android SDK by default. Building a React Native with native code, however, requires Android 15 Vanilla Ice Cream SDK in particular. Okay, building a React Native app with native code, however, requires Android 15 SDK in particular. Additionally, Android's SDK can be installed through the SDK manager in Android Studio. So to do that, let's get into this. Okay, but this React Native, this version requires that. Okay. Finish. Once we open up here, when you take a look at the Open Android Studio, click on More Actions. Click on More Actions. SDK Manager. Okay, that's interesting. More Action, SDK Manager. And here we're going to install is that Android 15. Okay, so the SDK Manager can be also found here. So Android SDK Platform 15 and the Intel X Atom 64 system image. But I don't think this is Intel Atom image. So show package here. So here we need to install is the Intel x86 64. Or for Apple Silicon, Google API RM64 for that exactly. Google APIs RM64 for M1 Silicon, which is what we got here. RM64 series. Okay. Next, select the SDK tool tab to check the box next to the show package detail. Here as well. Okay, select the SDK tool tab and check the next box to show package detail. Okay, look for and expand the Android SDK build tool entry, then make sure the 35.0.0 is selected. 35.0.0 is selected. Finally, click apply to download and install the Android SDK and related build tools. Okay. Interesting. Again, all of this is just for setting up stuff. All of this is just for setting up stuff.
Ya mi aplicación consiguió su primer inversionista. Lo que empezó hace 2 meses como un logo feo y unas diapositivas en Canva, hoy ya es una aplicación web con casi 300 usuarios y con nuestro primer alquiler realizado. El alquiler de una carpa para una chica que solo la necesitaba por un día para acampar en Chuspa con sus amigos. Esto despertó la atención de Venezuela Mobility Event, el primer fondo de inversión de capital de riesgo de Venezuela, fundada por parte del equipo de Ryder y que ya ha invertido en varias startups. Pero ¿qué es un fondo de inversión de capital de riesgo? Ese Machado lo va a responder. Y lo que hacemos es que recibimos emprendedores, así como tú, que vienen con súper ideas, buscamos invertir en ellas y ese dinero que les damos
Now that this is done, all right. Finally, click apply to download, install, and the Android SDK Studio, and then create and configure the Android home environment variable here on the C profile. I will prefer to go to the C profile here. In this case, C profile here. Let me open up here in code. That's right, C profile. And let me now add those to this, right? All right, we close this, and then we source the C profile. There you got it. All right, now this is just for Android. Preparing the Android device using a physical device or using the virtual device. If you have a physical Android device, you can use it for developing in place of an AVD by plugging into your computer using a USB and following the instructions here, right? If you want to run this on your device, say, hey, running Android here on your device, you want to do is this instead. Method 2, connecting via Wi-Fi, which can be another way to do this. Now, but because I want to keep things simple, you know, I want to run that in my virtual device. For now, okay. This is on Android. And when it comes to iOS, we already installed Node and Watchman. By looking at the command line here, okay, is by going to Xcode here. The command line here, by going into the settings, where is settings? Open the Xcode and the settings. Oh, for real? Okay. Let me open up this one. All right. And then on the settings, okay. Then choose setting or preference from Xcode menu. From Xcode menu, choose is now settings, and then locations. Okay. Put this as it is. Go to the location panel and install the tool by selecting the most recent version in the command line tools, which is, that's what we have right now. It is already installed. Good. Installing an iOS simulator in Xcode. By looking at this, to install a simulator, open Xcode setting or preference and then select the platform or component, which is platform and components here, right? If you're using Xcode version 14 or greater, to install a simulator, open the Xcode setting platform tab and click the plus icon there. So because here we are now using is the iOS, where you can also choose what you want. Okay, this is being already installed because otherwise we wouldn't be able to test that. And then the Cocoa Pods is one of the dependency management system available for iOS. Cocoa Pods is a Ruby gene, and you can install that for that. So I already installed that, so no problem of this. And then you get this option of configuring your environment. Starting from React Native version 0.69, it is possible to configure the Xcode environment using the xcode.env file provided by a template. The Xcode file contains the environment variable to export the path to the node executable in the node binary variable. This is the suggested approach to decouple the build infrastructure from the system versions of Node. you should customize this variable with your own path on your own node version manager if it's different from default. On top of this, it is possible to add any other environment variable to the source to the xcode.env file in your build script phase. If you need to run a script that requires some specific environment, this is the suggest approach. Exactly. If you need to run a script that requires some specific environment, this is the suggest approach. In our case, no, but you can imagine that for other companies, for different versions, yes. It allows to decouple the build phase from a specific environment. If you're already using NVM, a command which helps you to install, switch between versions, you might want to move the code that initialize NVM from your source to to the environment here, to help Xcode to find your node executable. You might also want to ensure that all shell script build phase of your Xcode project is using bin shell as it is shell. Okay. So anytime you do a build phase, shell script build phase on your Xcode is using the shell, not the bash. And this is it. Holy moly. All right. Now that we already set up that, okay. Okay.
Introduction, well, just a quick hi from me. So, hi, my name's Caddy, and I consultancy work in 2024
Yeah,
that's
we know a
installed
little bit of
or
you.
Linux machine with Node.js installed. And we're going
Exactly. I already have that version installed, so Node version here. That's right.
to start with Expo-Go, so you should have an iOS or an Android phone as well. And finally, you will need to set up your development environment for either iOS or Android, or both, but I recommend choosing one to begin with. And just for a bit of housekeeping, for the course format, we have this course website, which you hopefully know. So we're going to do common code will be to a commit you can pick up, just to highlight some useful information.
So,
in this course, we will be building our native app on the local machine. So for this, you need to set up your local native build environment. So you need specific special tools to build the native app locally. For iOS, you need Xcode. Xcode is an app that's available on the Mac App Store. And if you don't have this downloaded and you want to build your install and React Native documentation. So if you go to target of your environment, because it will build. We look at our topics, we're going to do a development build here. So at this point, hopefully, Java, you need to set your environment variables for the Java home, install Android Studio, etc. So I'm not going to do a step-by-step instruction on how to set up your build environment, because it will differ based on whether you're on Windows or Linux or Mac OS and whether you're doing iOS and Android, and it will just take a really long time. So I recommend you download Xcode and or Android Studio, and then follow these instructions on the official React Native documentation. We are in fact going to start this workshop with Expo-Go. So if you look at our topics, we're going to do a development build here. So at this point, hopefully you have your development environment set up. Let's start by creating a brand new project. You will need to have Node installed for this. So if you do node-v, then we're looking for a long-term support version. So in case of nodes, the even numbered versions are long-term support. So 18 is getting a bit old now, but 20, 22 in the future, 24, etc. I'm going to be using Node 20. And secondly, regarding package managers.
And she is using this NVM list here. She's using this version, bro. It's NVM use version 20. Oh my god. So NVM use version 20 15.1. And there you got it. Say no version, no dash version. Exactly.
But 20 manager. Check the documentation if you're using especially Yarn Modern or PNPM or Bun, to see if there's any caveats around the installation. So Yarn Classic is a little bit old now. It's still popular among React Native developers, and that's actually because this plug-and-play model that Yarn 2 and PNPM use was actually incompatible. Well, it is incompatible with how React Native modules are required. So in our iOS and Android directories, we tend to import specific files from our node modules, but the PNPM node linking model actually gets rid of our node modules builder, so this will break. There is a workaround now, so if you have to import specific files from our node modules, but the PNPM node linking model actually gets rid of our
Exactly, the PNP node linking model actually gets rid of the node modules builder.
Node modules builder, so this will break. There is a workaround now, so if you have this config file by setting the node linker to node modules, and it's the same for PNPM using node linker hoisted, then you can still use these package managers.
Oh, it's because the linking model. Oh.
But just FYI, that's what I'm using.
It's because the linking model of this.
Yarn 1, Yarn Classic. So the command to create a new Expo app is npx create Expo app. And to do --help, it will print out the usage information for the.
So, okay, this is Planty project setup. Planty project setup. Okay, so follow the recommendation here. This might take you an hour. Okay. And let's get the Planty project setup. Okay, this is now Planty project setup. Okay.
This command, and npx is a node package executor.
So npx is a node package executor where you say, hey, create Expo app help, create Expo app help, and that's it. So behind the scenes now is calling that.
Get npx when you install Node, so it's part of Node, and it lets you execute Node packages without installing them on your local machine.
Exactly, it lets you to execute remote Node.js package without installing them on your local machine.
So here, by default, if you just create Expo app, it will use a default template which has a bunch of code already set up. So it will have navigation set up, it will have dark and light mode, it has a bunch of components, and it's just meant to give you a head start, so you have some code to start with and you get an idea of what you can build. You could reset this template, but in this case, let's just start with a blank TypeScript template.
Okay.
And the other thing here, it gives you commands here on how to create this project on various package managers. And in our doc side, I provided commands for yarn, npm, pnpm, and bun to.
We have now yarn. Let me see if I have installed yarn. I should have. That's right. And if you take a look at the Expo docs and how to install that, because this is a framework around React Native that give us stuff that are important in the React Native development or the hybrid mobile development, such as the navigation, the way to publish your app into those specific platform store, Android and iOS. It makes a lot of sense. And also some of the convenient features as well. So for example, haptics. Regulatory compliance and data and privacy protection, GDPR compliance and HIPAA compliance and privacy shield. So, yeah, develop an app with Expo. This is the process of developing an app. The core development loop, make a change to the project, write JavaScript application code, see the change reflected in your app, update the app package config, does the change impact the native project, create a new development build, cloud-based or local, do you use continuous native generation, create a new development build with npm expo run, and see the changes reflect that. Write native code or modify native configuration. Create a new development cloud base. Okay. So it will generate is a new version with this new. Okay. Install a library from npm. Does the library include native code? No. Make change. All right. So, but again, configure with app. No, I want to look at the introduction, the overview, building an app, universal link, custom native. I just wanted to explore is the reference npm expo install. The introduction to create a project and set up your project as it is. Android device, iOS, and development build. Interesting. And install Watchman. Configure your project, install Expo Dev Client, and run the project on your device.
Create an app called Plantly and trigger the default template. So I'm going to be using Yarn.
And let's go to now do is this Yarn, the model package of Node. Yarn create Expo app, create Expo app, name Plantly, with a flag of TypeScript. Okay.
And this should trigger this choose a template prompt. And I'm going to choose a blank TypeScript template. Now, you might be wondering whether you have to use TypeScript, and honestly, I'd very, very much recommend it. Most modern software projects these days use TypeScript, and it's very much become an industry standard for JavaScript project. So it is good for your career, usually, to learn TypeScript if you haven't yet. But if you really don't want to, you can choose a blank TypeScript template instead. I'll be using TypeScript throughout this course, but because TypeScript is additive, you could remove the typing information and write in JavaScript. Now, this is some quick setup that I always do whenever I start a new.
So, well, I'm just gonna make a quick pause here. All right, and welcome back. As you can see, this is a different day, light source, because well, we paused the video and now we are here, right? So, what we had done in the in the previous section was to actually understand that how can we set up the environment here by looking at the setup environment provided by React Native here. When you take a look at the setup environment, or let's take a look at this, set up your environment here. And what are the things that we need to put in place as a way to now make the or to create a development build. Why this is important? Because so far, and with the other courses, at least for the intro of React Native, we look at how can we get into this fast with Expo Go, which is the framework around React Native that allow us to at least understand what is the basic in the fundamentals of React Native. We went through understand the value proposition of React Native, which is allow us to write user interface that target native platform specific directives on iOS, Android, and also Windows, but only for iOS and Android. And look at the architecture and how now React Native works behind the scenes by rendering these components. And it has similar to React, which is exclusively for building user interface on the web. Now here it has three phases: the render, where it transforms the where it creates the React element tree, which is a plain JavaScript object that represents is the what should look like. So what are the elements? Or what is the screen should look like? And it also contains some props from React. And also contains some prop from React. And this is then now converted into the same stage, the render stage, into a React shadow tree, which is now a object representation in C++ of this object, or of what should the screen look like, right? Now, then we have on the commit phase, which is the fabric, the React Native rendering systems. Now, once it have this React element tree, which is a JavaScript objects, and the React shadow tree, now it promotes both to be the next element or the next tree to be mounted. And here in this phase is where now it calculates is the positions and the dimension of those objects. And they use something called Yoga, which is a particular library to calculate that. So with that in place, now on the next phase, which is the mount, is where it transforms that information into a host view tree. So all of this, so this entire pipeline can happen in different threads. And you have now the UI threads, which only allow you to manipulate is host view elements in the JavaScript, where it happens the render or when the React rendering logic happens, as well as the calculation, layout calculation. Why am I telling you this, right? It's because this is now how the things work. This is the architecture. And if you want to build a React Native app, they now provide you is other tools that allow you to. So for example, like, well, of course, Node.js, the environment that allows to write is this applications in a web, some sort of web platform using JavaScript environments like Node, and watchmans to identify file change. And whether if you're using Android and iOS, we look at what are the things that we need to install, for example, in the Java development kit, and set up the proper environment variables like Java home, and then install the Android and set the specific Android SDK platform, or the specific Android SDK, the platform tools, and the emulator or the Android device. And because here is React Native that is going to build those apps, we need to be careful of which version we're currently using. For example, if you're using this, the version 7.4, you might need to go with the Android SDK platform 34, as well as the the APIs, the Google APIs for that. So if you go even lower versions, wait, what? Environment setup. So even though if you go for lower versions, it actually tells you what to do. So, but in any case, so we are now in this version 0.77, and well, we already set up the Android and the iOS. Okay, now let's finally is get into what we really care, and that is to the projects. So yesterday we went through the projects. Let me actually show you the proper project here. Intro v3. Okay, so let me actually open up that. Yep, let me actually open up that. Planted. Let me actually so let me remove in a recursive node model. It is plenty. Okay, and let's go to install now plenty, or at least with the Expo Go. So going to put it this way, plenty setup project. So let's go with, yeah, let's go with this. So let's run this command. Okay, if you take a look at the Expo docs here, that is this one, particularly the develop with Expo Go. Initialize and run your project. Create a new project with Expo Create. Home, exactly, and you have now several options here. So if you want to, for example, check out the here, which is a very useful command to check first the command using npnx. Okay, so npnx is a command. It's a command. This is another thing why I'm taking notes out of this.
I'm going to be using Yarn Classic, but you can use any of them. I'm going to be using Node 20. And secondly, regarding package managers, all modern package managers are supported, so you can use npm, Yarn Classic, Yarn Modern, pnpm, bun, etc. I'm going to be using Yarn Classic, but you can use any of these. But you can check the documentation if you're using especially Yarn Modern or pnpm or bun to see if there's any caveats around the installation. So Yarn Classic is a little bit old now. It's still popular among React Native developers, and that's actually because this plug-and-play model that Yarn 2 and pnpm use was actually incompatible. Well, it is incompatible with how React Native modules are required. So in our iOS and Android directories, we tend to import specific files from our node modules, but the pnpm node linking model actually gets rid of our node modules folder, so this will break. There is a workaround now, so if you have this config file by setting the node linker to node modules, and it's the same for PMPM using node linker hoisted, then you can still use these package managers. But just FYI, that's why I'm using Yarn Classic. So the command to create a new Expo app is npx create Expo app. And to do --help, it will print out the usage information for this command. And npx is a node package executor. You get npx when you install node, so it's part of node.
But it's an xpn, okay, npnx is a node command executor, which means it helps execute node package without installing them. Which means it tells Node.js package to execute. So it lets execute Node. It's a node command executor. It lets you. npm is a node command executor. It lets you execute node commands. It lets you execute node commands without or node package. So npm is a node command executor. It lets you execute node package without installing them locally.
And it lets you execute node packages without installing them on your local machine. So here, by default, if you just create Expo app, it will use a default template which has a bunch of code already set up. So it will have navigation set up, it will have dark and light mode, it has a bunch of components, and it's just meant to give you a head start, so you have some code to start with and you get an idea of what you can build. So you could reset this template, but in this case, let's just start with a blank
I want you
TypeScript
to execute
template.
this node command.
And the other thing here, it gives you
I want
commands
you to execute this command. I want you to execute this Node.js command without installing that locally, right? I want you to run this npnx command without installing you locally. So in other words, it goes, it hits that, or it send away an HTTP request that now runs that command in your local machine, so we don't need to install them. So whether if you already have that installed in your local project or run that from their service.
On how to create this project on various package managers, and in our doc side I provided commands for yarn, npm, pnpm, and bun.
And you might wonder, where is this located? You know? A very, very interesting question. Well, on the remote service that you already set up.
To create an app called Plantly and trigger the default template. So I'm going to be using yarn. And this.
Okay. So now we're going to use yarn for that. Yarn create Expo Plantly app. We're going to use now the TypeScript.
Should trigger this choose a template prompt. And I'm going to choose a blank TypeScript template. Now, you might be wondering whether you have to use TypeScript, and honestly, I'd very, very much recommend it. Most modern software projects these days use TypeScript, and it's very much become an industry standard for JavaScript project. So it is good for your career, usually, to learn TypeScript if you haven't yet. But if you really don't want to, you can choose a blank TypeScript template instead. I'll be using TypeScript throughout this course, but because TypeScript is additive, you could remove the typing information and write in JavaScript. Now, this is some quick setup that I always do whenever I start a new project, which is setup linting. So ESLinting.
Okay, so yeah, this is now setup linting. So perhaps you might get into a project that already have linting. Okay, so setup linting. Okay,
Prettier go hand in hand. ESLint is a code linter and Prettier is a code formatter. So ESLint tells you if you're doing something incorrect, and Prettier just formats your code, so you can focus on writing your code rather than worrying about where your braces should go. From SDK 50, there is a CLI command that sets up ESLint for you. So if we cd into our newly created directory, and npx expo-lint.
Okay. So from SDK 50.
If we cd into our
So
from SDK
50, exactly. From SDK 50, now Expo allows you to. So from SDK 50, Expo allows you to set up the linter and formatter with a single command. That's fantastic.
There is a CLI command that sets up ESLint for you. So if we cd into our newly created directory, and npx expo-lint. And because I don't have ESLint set up, it will prompt me if I want to install ESLint and configure it on this project. Let's choose yes. Now when I open this project, you see that it's created this ESLint RC for us. I also want to set up Prettier, and for this we need to install some libraries, so if you're using Yarn, you want to use this, otherwise...
But again, this only runs so npm, so if you want to open up this, let's say with cursor here, alright, much better. Let me, in fact, actually now show this. Where is it? Planting. There you go. We are okay. Now, on that, okay, I can now run as npm expo, okay, this no command executor expo lint, right? So what it's gonna do is say, hey, we couldn't find any ESLint configuration. Would you like me to install it? Please, be my guest. Be my guest. Absolutely. Okay. Once that is done, we can now see that this install the ESLint properly. All right. But we need to now indicate is the prettier configuration.
Is use npx expo install.
And now the prettier configuration. Expo-link, expo-lint. So inside of our project, we run this. Okay, and set up and install the packages needed for the formatting, like this. So this is kind of the file that you barely use, right? Or you just use only once and you forget about that.
And we want to update our ESLint RC to include the prettier plugin and some rules.
So the idea of, instead of copy this, is to understand, just to recap, right? What are the stuff that we need to tell ESLint to add that? What are the rules that we want to extend it? So we say, hey, Expo, and also is the React Native, because we already installed the ESLint plugin of React Native. Okay. Then I want you to now is extend and add the plugins here. Okay, and add the plugins. Exactly. And add the plugins here as an array of Prettier and React Native. Okay, of Prettier and React Native. This is now the plugin here to extend the functionality, and the other is to inherit that. And some of the rules that we want to put in place, that we want to enable here. So you got the rules. No. So the rules is now an object that we're gonna pass here. Again, this is most config stuff, but you have to at least understand what this config stuff means, because most of the time we have to spend a lot of the time in this config. So, and by doing this at least one, well, we can now have, so we can understand what we're doing this. So we have now Prettier and Prettier. Okay, so this is the rule. All of this come from this package that we already installed, Prettier and Prettier. And what are the rules that we want to apply? Say, hey, show the errors. Error. All right. And the other is the React Native, no unused style. The React Native / non unused style error. Okay, no unused style error. Right? You got this? No unused styles in plural. Only that. And here you have is the error. Error. Okay. And finally here, if you want to check this, okay, if you want to check this, we say now yarn
Lovely.
yarn lint fix. Can set argument here because must be with double dash. It say, hey, something went wrong because ESLint couldn't find config React Native to extend from. Please check the correct name. The config React Native was referenced by this. And if you still have problem, there you got React Native. Because it's on the extent, it's prettier. Prettier. There you got it. Now, if you run yarn lint fix, there you got it. Okay.
And the good thing about Prettier is that that all the pretty errors are auto-fixable. Yeah, so now that I've added this, I'm expecting to see some Prettier errors here, and that's because Prettier defaults to double quotes. The good thing is that we can run npx, we can run your lint command with --fix, and it will automatically.
Exactly. So in our case, it will automatically now fix to this. All right. Good.
Update these. So your lint command was added automatically to your scripts, so it would just be ESLint. So it will be npm run lint, or yarn lint, or etc. To now run your project, you want to start the bundler. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be using the Expo-Go sandbox initially. So we want to run the start command to start the Metro bundler on here. So let's do yarn start, or you can do npx expo start. So this will print out a QR code that you can scan in with Expo-Go. I'm going to plug in my phone to show you. Okay, I'm going to uninstall Expo-Go, so we're starting from scratch, just
Exactly,
in case.
but this is if you want to know.
So on iOS, you will go to the App Store, search for Expo-Go. You want to install the app, and we'll open it. So on iOS, you can't scan the QR code in-app, and
the production or planting. A production ready. Planting. A production ready. Yeah, a production ready React Native app. Android and iOS. So the goal, understand the workflow from setup to understand the workflow from setup to development build. Understand the understand the React Native workflow from setup development, from setup development feedback, development build, and publish, because that's the entire reason of all of this, and or deployment. Okay, so understand the React Native workflow from setup, development feedback, development builds, and deployment. That's the entire reason of this course. Resource is all of this resource. Previous region, GitHub repo. If you are lost, and then you got this one. Okay. Good. Very, very good. That's right. Whoops. We did it. It's like this. And then this one. That's right. Similar for the architecture. is curly bracket, square bracket, and then parenthesis. And similar for this one. Square brackets, square brackets, square brackets, and parentheses, and there you got it. Understand the React Native workflow from setup, development feedback, development builds, and deployment. That's all. It's pretty straightforward, man. Pretty straightforward.
Actually, originally Expo did have this functionality, but Apple wasn't happy about it. So now, the way that you open your app in Expo on iOS is you open your camera app, and then scan it, and then this will deep link into Expo. Now, if you've just installed it, this won't work the first time, so I found that I need to start quitting the app, and then it will prompt me if I want to connect to devices on my local network. So I'll do allow, and just do camera again.
Now the Metro bundler is doing behind the scenes.
Lovely. So now this is my app from my local dev server running on Expo. You need to make sure that your phone is connected to the same Wi-Fi network as your computer, and that's because this bundling process is running on local host, so you need to be on the same network. If for some reason that isn't possible, or it isn't working, then you can actually get around it by using tunnel. So you can do mbx expo start -- tunnel. But the first time you run this, it will prompt you to install an ngrok package. But then what this does is that it exposes this JavaScript bundle to a web API. So you could scan it and run it without being on the same network. And this is actually really cool because it allows you could conceivably, if you're working with someone that's say in Australia and you're in the US, you could run a local dev server, you can give them the link and they could run it on their phone, which is pretty cool. Let me just show you this on Android as well.
So now if I go here and say, hey, let's go to now run is jar iOS. And then I want to say, hey, open an Android iOS emulator, right? Let me in fact is remove this app here. Okay, let's do this again. Installing Expo iPhone. Just opening the project. Metro bundler is now sending the bundler behind the scenes to that, and it's actually showing this right now. Let me show you this fairly quickly, and this is it, right? This is now our new blank Expo app. Okay, something that I'm quite familiar with.
On my Android phone, let me just delete. Uninstall.
We can also
so we're starting from the same point. So we're going to go to the Play
do
Store.
Something like this and say, hey, I want to now
and search for Expo.
Open up in Android
and install it.
Okay, it will take quite a bit amount of time because we already have a lot of stuff going on.
And you notice that
here.
on your Android phone, you do have an option to scan the QR code in app because Android doesn't have the same restriction as iOS. So
is now opening the emulator, and as you can see, well, you are not able to see, but let me is now show you that let me open a new one. Capture macOS screen, macOS screen capture. This is Android emulator, right? Let me now show you that window capture. It is astonished that this still running. What is the name of this? Android emulator. If I hit this, no, because this is the Android. Maybe at the bottom. Simulator, iPhone Pro Max, window, like this. What about this? Property of Android emulator. No, this is the simulator. Oh, there you got it. Here we are. Okay. Yeah, it's too massive. It's way too massive. But as you can see, we have now these two devices running here. Okay. So to get into this, Android is not that restrictive for that. So it say, hey, ever close. It can be loaded. What about on Android? Do that again. Now it's unloading. Okay, it's unloading Expo inside of the Android emulator. Once that it get that, now it launched that. Metro Bundle takes control. It now serialize. It now, so the model bundler, it takes now so it resolves the model package, the model resolution package, then it transform and serialize to be sent over here, and now we can see our app here, right? Which is great. That's powerful here. That's pretty powerful stuff. Now we are going to work is with Android. We're gonna work is with iOS. Thanks for Android to be here. So you just want to check that, and that'll be all, right? We actually consume huge amount of RAM just by running them and having a lot of Xcode tabs and all that kind of stuff open. But in any case,
We'll go
here
scan the
we are.
QR code, allow the permissions, and then we can scan this, and it will open our local app on our Android phone. Again, if this isn't working, make sure that you're on the same network as your computer, and if it still isn't working, then try the -- tunnel option. So it is actually quite especially common on Windows, we found, because Windows has a firewall, so the dev server doesn't always get around the firewall. So you can change the firewall to allow that port, but as a quick workaround, you can use -- tunnel. You cannot use it, that would be preferred though, because it will be a bit faster on localhost. And lastly, it would be handy for me to run this on a simulator, so I'm actually going to run this locally instead of on a phone, so it'll be easier to screen share. There we go. So this was our starting point.
A warning. A plan.
Next up, we're going to
plan.
install a navigation library. So React Native doesn't come with navigation by default, so we need to choose one, and we're going to use Expo-router for navigation. Expo-router is a file system-based navigation library, and it's built on top of React Navigation. So if you're familiar with Next.js, then or libraries like that, then you probably already understand what file system-based routing is. But basically, it means that your file system defines the screens that exist in your app.
Is that the industry standard? Is Expo router, or are there other routers that have?
Exactly. A plan watering reminder app to explore setup,
so
development workflow.
There's 3 navigation libraries for React Native. There's React Navigation,
and deployment.
There's React Native Navigation, which I think is less popular these days, and then there's Expo-router, which is built on top of React Navigation. So the main two ones that are used right now, as far as I'm aware, are Expo-router and then React Navigation. React Navigation if you don't want file system-based routing, but Expo-router is the future, in my biased opinion. So I've linked to the Getting Started docs here.
So git status here, say git oh, but let's go into git init here. That's another interesting stuff.
Is the future, in my biased opinion. So I've linked to the getting started. So we'll need Expo router. There's React Native safe area of libraries. So which I think is less popular these days. We already understand with files.
It doesn't include the git ignore. Okay, git ignore. Okay, so why you don't take that in consideration? So git status. All right, much better. And that's fine. Okay. So we can say is this one. So git status. So git add everything here, and then you say git status, git commit with a message. This is the first commit, right? Good, good. So if you want to now push those changes, say git push origin git push. Oh, did I? Okay, makes sense. And there you got it. So you already have those changed in the main. Good, cool, cool. Now it's going to create now a branch here, git switch, and this branch will be called now navigation. Navigation. Okay. And let's get into this.
System-based routing is, but basically, it's
Yep, navigation. Let's get into this. Navigation here. So navigation here. Ooh. Navigation here. Okay, installing and configuring Expo router. Let's get into this. So installing and configuring Expo router, which is, you can use this Expo router, okay, a file-based routing and navigation system that is behind the scenes. It uses the React navigation suite. Okay, that behind the scenes it use, okay, that behind the scenes Exactly. So behind the scenes, okay, function control. Okay, function control and then function shift. Okay. So because behind the scenes is now using this one, right? So behind the scene it use now React navigation. React navigation. All right. So behind the scene it use React navigation. And this is well this will be our focus in today's video, right? The setup and the navigation. All right. So easy to use. Start quickly with built-in navigators that deliver a seamless out-of-the-box experience. A lot of this is part of the copywriting. Component built for iOS and Android. Platform-specific look and feel with smooth animation and gestures. Completely customizable and extendable platform. React Navigation is built by Expo, Software Mention, and CallStack, with contributions from the community and sponsors. So that's interesting. If React Navigation is helpful to you, consider support the project or sponsor it. So this is it. And now that's what I want to dive deep into this course on the different type of navigation: stack, native stack, bottom tabs, drawer, and material top tabs. But not only that, is to go with the help of someone that have experience. All right. So I want you to show me this process. All right, let's get into this.
It means that your file system defines the screens that exist in your app.
Is that the industry standard as Expo router, or are there other routers that have generally been used in production applications?
So there's 3 navigation libraries for React Native. There's React Navigation, there's React Native Navigation, which I think is less popular these days.
Okay, React Navigation, React Native Navigation, which is less popular in this. Interesting. Stack, bottoms, and side menus. And there is the Expo router. Interesting. So there are, at least in 2025, 3 main libraries, 3 main navigation libraries. You got now this one, React Navigation, okay. You got is the React Native Navigation, which is less popular. Okay, less popular. Interesting. They launched that in Wix. And then you have now is Expo router. Right? Expo router. The Expo router. And here we are. telling you. All right. Here goes.
And then there's Expo Router, which is built on top of React Navigation. So the main two ones that are used right now, as far as I'm aware, are Expo Router and then React Navigation. React Navigation if you don't want file system-based routing, but Expo Router is the future, in my biased opinion. So I've linked to the Getting Started docs here, and I've also copied the steps that we need to do. So first we install a bunch of libraries. So
Okay, so we need to install all of this library.
So we'll need Expo Router. There's React Native Safe Area Context. So this is to have the safe area on your screen. So this is handled automatically by the navigation library. So on iOS, you know, when you have the bottom and top of your screen,
but
you can't actually put
installing and configuring Expo Router. Exactly, installing and configuring Expo. Exactly, installing and configuring Expo Router. Let's install a bunch of library here, which is all of this model, no model executor, none of that. And let's get into this. So here we are installing using Expo, the Expo Router, the React Native Safe Area Context, React Native Screen, Expo-linking, Expo Constants, and Expo Status Bar. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, right? Yep, a lot of things behind the scenes. So if we go through the router, Expo Router here, most likely the React Navigation, okay, but did you have any guides for routing? Environment variable, linking, custom navigation, local bundling, existing React Native Expo Router. You got it. Like this, offline first, optimized iteration, universal and discoverable. Using a different navigation libraries, you can go with React Native, or if you're looking to use React Native navigation by Wix. It's not available in the Expo Go, and it's not yet compatible with Expo Dev Client. We recommend using Create Native Stack Navigator from React Navigation to use Android and iOS navigation APIs. Interesting. So here on the installation, we go with Expo npmx Expo Star, okay, to view your app on the mobile device. We recommend starting with Expo Go. As your application grows in complexity and you need more control, you can create development build, which is something that we're going to look at that later. So this is the manual installation, and there is a lot of things that we need to install. This is the installation, right? So from Expo routing, from Expo routing installation, right? From Expo routing installation. Yep, that's right.
Content, because you have your status bar and your little notch. So this protects against that. So you're only putting content in the visible area. And there's React Native Screens, there's Expo-linking. So this is because one of the good things, like amazing things actually, about React Navigation is that you get deep linking basically for free. It's a side effect. It's a benefit of doing file system-based routing. You don't need to configure the routes because they're implicit from the file system. So deep linking for the first time in React Native becomes, I don't want to say easy, but I'm kind of want to say easy. And we also have Expo Constant.
Expo-linking. So Expo or deep linking. Expo-linking make deep linking fairly fairly intuitive okay. Expo linking make deep linking fairly intuitive since it is a file based routing system since it is a file based routing system. Yep, since it is a file based routing system. So therefore, you can easily look at them. Deep linking or expo linking. When they tell you about deep linking, is that how you're going to now navigate into a deep or nested route, right? So now with Expo Router, which is file-based routing system, it makes more intuitive to do that, right? To know where you are and where you want to go.
And an Expo status bar. Now we need to set up the entry point of our app. So if you go to the package JSON, so if you have any JavaScript project that has a package JSON, it has this main field here, and the main is the main entry point for this application, for this library, for this whatever. And by default, this is actually a link to a file in your Node modules. So if you go to Expo and then app entry, CDE,
You're in the no model.
Expo and then app entry, just to see what this does. And basically, all it does is it requires your main file, so your app.tsx, and then it calls register root component with it. So if you used React Native CLI, if you ever used React Native Community CLI to create a project, you've probably seen this, and it was in this index.js file, and then the main would point to index.js. And this is just a convenience that is like abstracted away, so you don't have to have your index file. It is handy to know that this exists because there are some React Native libraries that require you to do something before calling register root component, in which case you could copy this content into an index file and then change your main entry point to your local file and then do additional things. So this is just an FYI of what's happening behind the scenes. We need to change this into, didn't actually copy this, we need to change this into expo router/entry, which is this. And then this entry point, if we go to our node
We
modules,
go to the
and look for Expo router,
no model Expo Router
Expo router, and entry.
entry.
So you can see that this actually does some additional things. So the root of our app will change to be our app folder, and does some additional things to pass the initial screen for us. But in the end, it also calls the render root component. So again, if for some reason you need to change this, you can move this into an index file in your application. But for now, it is handy to have this abstracted away.
Okay, this is not part of the routing here. This is part of the routing here. Okay, so by installing is this. All right. So we install all of this library for routing. Because routing is not a trivial stuff. Okay, git status, git add everything here, and then you say git commit with a message, add or install expo router package. Okay, right, and then we say, all right. Now we want is package.json here is to change the entry point. So here we are actually pointing to the index here, but as you can see here, is now correctly doing this, right? Register component is called app register component main app. It also ensures that wherever you load the Expo in Expo Go or in a native build, the environment is set up properly. And if you take a look at the Expo root component, which is from here, similar to the Expo, that is from the now model Expo source, it do all of this kind of stuff. Okay, event emitter, share objects, share native, blah blah blah, core classes methods, but this is from Expo source. Okay. However, if we go into navigate this, set up the entry point for this for the property main, use the export router entering its value as the package JSON. The initial client file is app layout.js. But on the package JSON, we're going to modify is the export router entry that say, hey, let's indeed now not take in consideration the entry point of our router, but the Expo router entry point. So that's interesting. So if we look at the Expo router in our models, Expo router, Expo router here, exactly inside of our plugin here in the entry, we're going to see is this import Expo router entry classic. So now it called this file here where it say, hey, export or import the Expo Metro runtime, the Metro bundler. We're assuming that, right? Expo Metro runtime. This source code is licensed under the MIT license found in license this. Location install async require Expo Metro runtime virtual. So in Expo router build qualify and Expo build render component.
Next, we'll need to update our project config in your application to Expo router/entry, which is this. And in this entry point, we go to our node modules and look for Expo router, and entry. So you can see that this actually does some additional things. So the root of our app will change to be our app folder. And this does some additional things to
so the root of our app will change to be the app folder. So by setting up the so by setting up the entry point here, to use the Expo router entry, we are essentially telling to our app to follow the app router file base.
Actually does some additional things. So the root of our app will change to be our app folder.
So we're essentially telling to our app that the root of our file, we're essentially telling to our app that the root of our app will be the app / the app folder.
And does some additional things to pass the initial screen for us. But in the end,
and thus additional stuff to parse that.
And it also calls the render root component our app folder. And does some additional things to pass the initial screen.
And those additional stuff to pass the initial screen for us. And those additional stuff to pass the initial screen for us. And this initial screen is the splash screen
For us. But in the end, it also calls the render root component So again, if for some reason you need to change this, you can move this into an index file in your application. But for now, it is handy to have this abstracted away. Next, we'll need to update our project config to provide a scheme. So if we open our app.json, so this is a config file for your app, and we'll add a scheme field. And a scheme is basically, the reason this is required is because, as I mentioned, deep linking is set up by default with Expo-router. And deep linking is basically linking into your app to a specific screen. And the way to deep linking
Exactly. Deep linking is linking to your app to a specific link.
Works on mobile applications is basically that your mobile app registers to listen to let's say a particular keyword. So when a link comes in, so there will be like plantly : / then your phone will go, okay, does anyone want to handle this link? And if your application has registered to handle this scheme, then it will say, yes, can you give it to me? And basically that's why we need to handle this. So this can be anything. You would want to make this probably like relevant to your app. So you want to make this as unique as possible, but it is not possible, like multiple apps can be registered to the same scheme. So for example, if you open, you see it more on Android actually. So on Android, if you open something that should open a web browser, and you have multiple web browsers installed, you might have seen this pop-up that says, oh, do you want to open this with this, this, or this? And then that's because it's multiple apps are registered to use the same scheme, so you need to choose. And on iOS, this is unfortunately handled kind of mysteriously in the background, where iOS just chooses an app for you to open. So this step is optional, and we're not going to be focusing on web in this workshop, but I wanted to show you that React Native Web is actually set up by default, so you can run everything that we're building on the web. So if you do want to try this, let's install these libraries. So we want React Native Web and React DOM. And also in our app.json, we want to make sure that the bundler is set to Metro. So if we open our app.json and then under web, make sure that we're using Metro. Lovely. And now we changed our main entry point. So we now also need to change our where our app components are rendered. So let's create a new folder called app.
So it's going to help you now to
non-negotiable. If you're using Expo-router, the root of your app is the app
is the app folder.
And in particular, let's move this app.tsx into our app folder and rename it index.tsx. So the main screen, the first screen that your app opens, if you're using Expo-router, is the root level index file in your app folder. So if you don't like using index files, you can actually get around without using most of them. The only one that you absolutely need is this root index file. Let's npx expo start again. Lovely. Okay, so if you've done everything correctly,
Expo-router now tells that, hey, the root of your app
and this is great.
is the app folder.
And the reason it's looking exactly the same is that we've not added a layout file. So if we add a layout file, we actually get a little header. So let's do an underscore layout.tsx. And let's import stack. This is from Expo-router. And for each of them, you always have to leave. And file name, the name title. On Android, the header bar looks slightly different, so we got a slightly different library user. And lastly, we set up all our web stuff. So in your terminal, if you type W, it should open a web browser. And this is the app that you're building, the same thing, using in React Native Web, running in a web browser. Now we're going to look at a couple of navigation methods. So first,
okay. That was quite interesting. And that'll be all for this video. Take care. Bye-bye.